Welcome to the Manitoba Ag Days podcast, where we hear from some of the most relevant, up-to-date, informational speakers in our industry. In episode 12, Rosamond Ragetli, Canadian Young Speakers for Agriculture Junior Champion Winnipeg, tells her story. Agriculture is more than just farming.
Good afternoon, Minister of Agriculture, honored guests, ladies and gentlemen. To begin, I would like to thank the President of Manitoba Ag Days for inviting me to present my speech from the Canadian Young Speakers for Agriculture competition. Agriculture, roaming cattle, the rustle of wheat fields, waves of flax, a distant dairy farm. These are some of the iconic images that have defined Canadian agriculture for generations. Today, I will discuss the Canadian agriculture industry, arguing that aside from the actual farming operation, agriculture is comprised of numerous, extremely important component parts. In this presentation, I will highlight three crucial areas within the current Canadian agriculture industry: research, politics, and enforcement. Agriculture, in some sense, has existed for more than 10,000 years. From the first plow, to the steam-powered tractor, to today's combine, an incredible feat in modern engineering and technology. Man has always pushed the bounds of current practice through imagination and research, constantly striving towards more efficient, productive, and economical agricultural practices. Research has been the cornerstone of human civilization for thousands of years, and research continues to propel Canadian agriculture into the future. Canada has always been at the fore of advances in both crop production and animal agriculture. An example of this achievement is Canada's domestically developed canola crop. Canola, a contraction of the word Canada and ola, meaning oil, was developed in the 1970s by researchers from Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. Canola was the first made-in-Canada crop ever introduced into the agriculture industry. According to the Canola Council, the canola industry currently contributes $26.7 billion to the Canadian economy, including 250,000 jobs. One of the incredible achievements of these scientists was the development of a crop with a 0% discard rate. 44% of each seed is used for oil, and 56% for high-protein meal in the animal agriculture sector. In addition to these properties, canola has one of the healthiest oil profiles of any oil-producing crop. My grandfather, Dr. Ragetli, worked as a research scientist with Agriculture Canada for over 30 years. He extensively studied diseases in fruit trees and personally worked with the scientists who developed canola. Through innovation and research, the next generation of scientists, like my grandfather, continue to drive Canadian agriculture forward, making our agriculture industries ever more productive and sustainable. The agriculture industry spans from research labs to the political sphere. Maintaining our international trading partners is key to the economic viability of our export markets, such as the Canadian beef and crop industries. Balancing often conflicting goals on the global scale is a highly complex branch of agriculture, involving politicians who ensure a market in which Canadian farmers can sell their products. An example of this complex political reality is the opposing nature of the North America Free Trade Agreement, or NAFTA, and the Canadian dairy industry. NAFTA supports tariff and barrier-free trade amongst its partners, while the Canadian dairy industry is based on a quota system, which meets the needs of Canadian consumers, prohibiting both the import and export of essentially all dairy products. On the one hand, our international trading partners are keen to gain access to the domestic market. However, opening the dairy industry would sacrifice a multitude of the small family dairy farms, which currently make up the majority of the Canadian dairy industry. This situation means that Canadian politicians must maintain the tenuous balance between keeping our trade partners content with this double standard, if you will, while also protecting Canadian farmers. This fine but dynamic line never ceases to be debated, and the need for politicians to serve the best interests of Canadian farmers is a constant and crucial component of our agriculture industry. It is imperative that the expectations of both domestic and international consumers, which are guaranteed by politicians during trade negotiations, are met. To achieve this end, Canada has a number of regulatory and enforcement agencies, perhaps the most prominent of which is the Canadian Food Inspection Agency, or the CFIA. The CFIA has a number of inspection points in order to prevent subpar products from entering both the domestic and global markets, as well as preventing the spread of animal diseases, which would close borders, thereby destroying the economic viability of our domestic export industries. With Canada's excellent animal identification system, any discrepancies found during these inspections can be traced back to the farm of origin if necessary. The claims made by politicians to both domestic and international consumers during negotiations are ensured by the regulatory and enforcement agencies of the Canadian agriculture industry. As today's Canadian farmers produce top quality products, they are supported by, among others, a cadre of closely connected research, political, and enforcement organizations working together to ensure scientific advancement, a stable market, and regulatory enforcement of Canadian products at every turn. Behind the canola fields and ranches, the dairy farms and wheat fields, there exists a complex system which allows these crucial realities to flourish. In part, agriculture is farming, but it is also much, much more. A complex network of organizations working together to become more efficient, more productive, and more economical, driving the Canadian agriculture industry forward into the future. Thank you.
Thanks for tuning in to the Manitoba Ag Days podcast. We'll see you next year from January 22nd to 24th, 2019.